Episode 28 of the Consistency Podcast is here. My name's Steve from Gloucester, and to begin, I want to play a quick clip from the movie Goodfellas.
Oh, you wrote it, Jerry.
Isn't that the perfect way to encapsulate Coleman when it comes to the KMS world? It seems like the hardcore KMS fans, and we know who they are, have this puzzling initiation process when it comes to KMS producers where they need to do something wacky or have this trial by fire moment to fully, quote unquote, be accepted into the world. Steve Robinson, some will say, broke his KMS cherry in the episode where Kirk spent the entire time ripping him to shreds over deleted audio and then having callers phone in to bash him. Cullinane and Justin, they did so many wacky and funny things over time, which are way too much to list here, that had them break their proverbial cherry. And Gus, of course, broke his cherry by crawling around the Burlington Mall and wearing a dog collar. And it's these embarrassing or Animal House type moments that a KMS producer needs to experience for fans to fully embrace them. And Coleman broke his cherry with his marathon session to name the top 10 home run hitters in Major League Baseball history. Of course, some of the social media seagulls thought this was a bit, but what else is new? I mean, these fools would complain if they won $100 and were paid out in $10 bills. But overall, the general consensus is that Coleman was fully embraced into the KMS world when after 30 hours, he finally answered Jim Thome as the 8th best home run hitter in Major League Baseball history. To be fair, I'm sure none of us were idiot savants like Frank the Tank, who rattled off the entire list in seconds. I mean, that was totally impressive. And a majority of the list was definitely simple, but you'd be lying if you said you didn't Google the list and were surprised that Mark McGwire, for example, was outside of the top 10. I thought he was a definite top 10 myself. And Jim Thome, he had an outstanding career. He was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he's easy to forget because he was not as charismatic as Albert Pujols or as volatile as Barry Bonds. So him coming to your mind quickly is not something that you would think of when you put together this type of list. And it's not to defend Coleman, but naming 10 fast food restaurants or 10 car manufacturers without help is simple, as it's common knowledge. But Coleman completing the home run list without the aid of his phone was an accomplishment, especially for someone who may be stretching the truth a bit when it comes to his knowledge of America's pastime. And what made this 30-hour marathon so compelling is how Coleman refused to quit. He was sleep deprived. He needed fresh air, a shower, and some vitamin D. Same with Justin, who we'll talk about next. And there was also this undue pressure on him to complete the list, but Coleman hung in there and he got it done. And we've all been there in some capacity when it comes to not being able to remember something. And I hate to swear, but, you can become mind-fucked in that situation. And that's what Coleman was. And he was definitely on the verge of cracking. He could have tossed in the towel at any time, but he earned his stripes. And you can say what you want about him. And trust me, these social media seagulls, these morons, thought that this was a bit, but Coleman cemented himself into the KMS world with this effort. It was a job well done by him for sure. We also cannot overlook how much of a positive and supportive role Justin played during this marathon session. The social media seagulls love to opine that Justin wants to be the lead producer and force Coleman out. You hear it all the time. And hopefully these dim bulbs can put that theory to rest now, as I don't think Coleman comes close to completing this list without Justin's help. I mean, Justin's the guy that you want to go to war with. He showed loyalty. He showed care for Coleman throughout the process. He made sure that Coleman was rested as much as he could have been, that he was focused, he was fed, and he was hydrated. And he did his best to keep Coleman calm in a very stressful situation. And it was amazing for everybody when Coleman finally named Jim Thome on the list. And a lot of that credit has to go to Justin, because he was an unsung hero through the process, and his contributions cannot be overlooked. And you also have to credit those who went into the studio to help overnight, like Mick, for example. And you have to especially give credit to Blind Mike and Kirk, who didn't need to go back into the studio when the regular show was over. They could have watched this like we all did, but they were doing whatever was necessary to provide great content and help Coleman get over the hump and break his cherry. I mean, this was a cohesive group. They were all on the same page. They worked together on a common goal, and this was impressive to say the least. It was a job well done by the boys in Watertown. And speaking of challenges, the other big item of the week was Chris Clemmer and this 100 hours of solitary confinement. Chris sleeping for most of the stream and being unwilling to participate in a majority of events to start made this completely unwatchable. I mean, I had no interest in it. I mean, who wanted to see Chris sleep? And it's no offense to Clemmer. He's a good guy. But we as Minute fans knew that Chris wasn't going to give us riveting stuff. But to do basically nothing but sleep was absolutely crazy. And you cannot question Dave Portnoy for pulling the plug on the stream. Any one of us in Dave's position would have probably done the same thing. And, you know, who knows what was real and what wasn't during the 100 hours. I mean, there isn't enough time to separate fact from fiction. But isn't it funny how Clemmer actually became more popular because Dave pulled the plug? He was the number one trending name in the country at one point, and Clemming became the word of the day on Twitter. Absolutely wild. And the check-ins of his sleeping during the unnamed podcast was absolutely hilarious. Isn't it unbelievable to think that Chris Clemmer, of all people, who was essentially Matt Carano's goofy sidekick when he first came onto the KMS scene, and Frank the Tank Fluffer when he got a job at Barstool, became a household name by doing absolutely nothing? Man, what a world. The question now is, how is Clemmer going to parlay this newfound fame into something more? Wait, hold on. This is Clemmer. He's a good guy, but we know nothing will probably come from this, as Clemmer has the initiative the size of a dime. He quit on his 95 Mariners stream. He quit his fantasy baseball league. He quit a theater near me. So I don't think he is all of a sudden going to have this initiative and become the next Barstool Big Cat. It's just not going to happen. From what we know of Chris, he'll end up doing his every Sunday videos about the Verrazano Bridge or the Rockefeller Center, which 328 people will watch. And he'll end up being in the back row during a gambling stream, talking to Marty Mush about a bet that he put in. But for now, it's awesome to see basically a Minifan become Mr. Popular for a few days. I mean, this is a great thing and something that all of us Minifans should celebrate and appreciate. However, the overall message and takeaway is that it's time for Barstool to stop this nonsense. Unless it's something that comes about organically, like the Coleman home run list, or it involves some of the top shelf Barstool talent like Portnoy, Kirk, or Whitney. I mean, just look at the Jersey Jerry event where he broke Caitlin Clark's scoring record. I mean, that was a complete dud. And it's because in reality, it was a guy with underwhelming talent in Jerry shooting hoops for hours. I mean, he's not a showman. That's just not who he is. And, someone like Rico Bosco could have made this a lot more funny if he did this with this healthy debate crew. But Jerry just doesn't have the same drawing power. And it's no offense to him. He was just placed in an unwinnable spot. It's time for Barstool to stop these shenanigans with their second and third tier talent, as everything from here on in is just going to be an example of Barstool jumping the shark. It's time to end this, please. And to close, I've been seeing a lot of people moving from this network onto the KMS network. It's definitely hard to overlook. And, one doesn't need to read the tea leaves to know what I hope will be the next step for the Consistency podcast. But for now, I must continue to resist comment, as it just leads to unnecessary speculation and feedback from the social media seagulls. Any conversations will remain private for now, but I will speak on this if blessed with the opportunity to go back into the Watertown studio. I had last week's appearance rescheduled, and I'm not sure if I'll be in this week. But until then, it's going to be a code of silence on the subject. I just don't feel comfortable talking about it right now. And with this said, I hope you all stay well. Enjoy your time with those that you love, and I'll talk to you soon.